Welcome to Husker Storm Blog. This is my Week 2 prediction video. Along with Week 2 predictions, I will be reviewing and analyzing last week's games, the biggest ones, and especially Nebraska. And I also have a bold prediction on the MLB playoffs wild card game this time. So stay tuned. We'll start off with last week's games. All right, so last week I went 8-1 in my prediction videos. My total point difference was 87 points, so I was off about 9.7 per game in the point differential. So I struggled there in the spread. We'll see if I can get that better, but 8-1's pretty good. The only one I missed was Auburn and Clemson. So South Carolina escaped Vanderbilt. Connor Shaw almost injured. Ohio upset Penn State. I called it. Penn State's going to start off 0-2. Check out that prediction later. Bama destroyed Michigan, 41-14, completely suffocating Denard Robinson, and their offense looks really smooth. Virginia Tech dropping in my polls as they escaped over Georgia Tech. Not very impressive. They barely won in overtime. Iowa, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, and Florida all struggled and escaped upsets in Week 1. Also, Okie State and West Virginia showed they can score. Okie State winning 84-0, and West Virginia putting up 69. Tyler Bray was very impressive, and they defeated North Carolina State. Spartans won behind their workhorse, Le'Veon Bell. He had a great game, and he put himself in the Heisman picture. Ellington, he ran over 200 yards. Had a great game against Auburn, as that was the game I missed as they beat Auburn 26-19. And next, now we're going to look at the Nebraska game versus Southern Miss. Well, Nebraska had a great game against Southern Miss offensively. Punted the ball once, 12 for 15 on third downs. That's an 80%. That's the best in the country in Week 1. They had no turnovers, 2 penalties, no offensive line penalties. The offensive line was great at pass blocking, the best pass blocking I've seen since the Callahan era. Run blocking was suspect in the second quarter, but they imposed their will for most of the game. The defense was all right. Okay, the defense wasn't great. They had to prepare for a team that had 3 quarterbacks listed as their number 1. A new offensive coordinator who's never coached college football. He's a high school football coach, so they had no tape of what he likes to do. They had to watch high school games. These quarterbacks they've never seen really. There was only one who had played previously in games for Southern Miss. So they had a lot of unknown to prepare for, and I think they did a decent job. Southern Miss has a good offensive line. They returned 4 starters from last year. And like I said, they would look well. They would look all right, but they weren't going to be great and dominating, and they need to improve on some tackles. They struggled getting some tackles on the quarterback, especially Alonzo Whaley. He always led with his head, never wrapped up. He's going to lose his starting job pretty soon. Look for Zaire Anderson or Santos to take that job. But how about Taylor Martinez? He said he would complete over 70% this year. He said he was going to be an improved passer. We heard all this stuff about how he's working on his technique and stuff. And you could see it in the game. I mean, his technique was improved. There was a couple times he went back to his old technique, but the ball was still on target. I mean, if the ball gets to point A and point B with the right velocity, which he had some really good spin on the ball yesterday, and, he did a great job. 354 passing yards, 76% completed, 5 touchdowns. 11 different Nebraska players touched the ball. 10 different players caught the ball. Now, there was a scary point in the game at the beginning. Burkhead sprained his MCL, which it's not long-term. He is questionable for next week. Look for him to be held out a little bit, limited in non-conference. He might play next week. I highly doubt it unless he's needed. But Nebraska showed Burkhead isn't just the team. Taylor Martinez can pass the ball this year. Marlowe broke his collarbone. He's out at least 6 weeks. Now, special teams, Brandon Maher wasn't great. He struggled really, really bad. Worst game of his career. I think he's going to pick it up. He'll be fine. Everybody has bad days. But I think Taylor Martinez, he A lot of people say he put his name in the Heisman. I'd say watch out there. Let's slow down. But I think he's going to have, next 3 weeks are going to be great against defenses that might not even be as good as Southern Miss's defense. Who knows how good Southern Miss's defense is, but next week's going to be a bigger test. You go to UCLA. Their defense is suspect, though. I think this offense can put up 500 yards in every single non-conference game and, really pad their stats before they go in the Big Ten, and Taylor Martinez could keep himself in the Heisman because of that. But it was definitely a great game offensively. Still some work needed, special teams, especially special teams coverages. But the defense was okay. I think we're going to see some improvement. I think they were better than last year, though. All right, so now we got the Week 2 headlining 10. So the big games for Week 2, 10 games, and check them out. Nebraska at UCLA. I expect more of the same from Nebraska that we got in Week 1. I believe the Bruins defense is probably about as good as Southern Miss's defense, which was really bad. At least Nebraska made them look really bad. The road atmosphere should add some more pressure to Taylor Martinez in the offense, so that's going to be a little bit of a test there. But I think this is going to be a lot like 2 years ago when Nebraska rolled into Husky Stadium. They were barely the favorite. They're only a 5-point favorite in this game, and there's about the same last time. When they rolled into Washington, I think they were like a 10-point favorite only. And Nebraska destroyed Jake Locker and the mediocre Pac-12 and their defenses that are completely mediocre and awful. And I expect the same this year. Offense is going to explode for 500 yards. Team Magic's going to continue his great passing. He's going to toss 2 touchdowns and run for another. The Huskers will, they're going to show they've got loads of weapons on offense, and no mediocre Pac-12 defense is going to be able to stop them. 52-20 at a dismantling in Pasadena. Washington at LSU. I think LSU, they played well against North Texas. It wasn't overly impressive for me. Zach Mettenberger did get injured in that game. I think he'll probably play this game. Even if he doesn't, they're still going to win this game. Washington had a bunch of injuries. They lost one of their running backs, their top defensive lineman, and then I believe a secondary player. So that doesn't help. They did beat San Diego State, and their defense looked much better, but their offense was suspect. But I expect Keith Price to show up a little bit in this one. LSU is going to have no problem running the ball on this Husky defense. The real question is, can Keith Price put it together against a SEC defense? I think he shows some signs, and it's not going to be enough. He's going to look all right, not going to be great, but the Tigers, LSU is going to get a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown in this one. It's going to be close for a quarter and a half, maybe 2 quarters, but knowing LSU, they tend to pull away in the second half. They win this one 38-17. Keith Price has a decent day, over 200 yards, but just not enough firepower in that offense to do anything against LSU. Georgia heads to Missouri. Georgia was not impressive against Buffalo defensively. Now, they were missing 3 key defensive starters. Expect them to play much better defensively in this one. They allowed 23 to Buffalo. I don't think they allow that much to Missouri today. They're going to play a lot better. Gurley had a great game, and I expect the same in this one. Missouri's first SEC game, they looked good last week, but Georgia's going to get their defense back to playing well, and they're going to shut down James Franklin and that offense. Gurley's going to find some success, and Georgia wins 31-20. All right, so Florida, not impressive at all against Bowling Green last week, escaping the swamp with a victory. And their offense was not particularly good at all in passing the ball. Their defense was not like last year, but it's a first game. Now they have to go to Texas A&M, and this is Texas A&M's first game. Their last game was postponed against Louisiana Tech. So we'll see what Sumlin can do. They got a new quarterback. Pretty much the same offensive line. They lost a little bit there, but not a whole lot. They return a lot there. They return a little bit on defense, and they do return Christian Michael. So I expect them to be able to run the ball a little bit. They are the favorite against Florida in this one. So this isn't really an upset, even though Florida is ranked and Texas A&M isn't. I expect Texas A&M to win in a good one, 17-13. Not a whole lot of points. And the 12th man plays big, as ESPN's going to be in there. 17-13, Texas A&M defeats Florida in their first SEC game. Miami at K-State. Last year, K-State went into Miami and won, and it was a great game. I expect this game to be the same. Colin Klein's going to lead Kansas State to a victory. Miami's going to do enough offensively to stay in this one. 30-28, Kansas State continues their success, starts off 2-0. And watch out, Big 12. Here comes Kansas State. 30-28, Kansas State wins. All right, so we got Air Force at Michigan. Michigan got rolled last week. We see if they can bounce back. Air Force played well against Idaho State. Their offense, their triple option can do some work. We'll see if Michigan can regain that swag. I mean, they got destroyed last week. But, they got to move on. Air Force is a team you cannot sleep on. You got to have your defensive line and your linebackers prepared. I think Air Force is going to find a little success, especially in the first half against Michigan's defense. They don't return a whole lot of their defensive line, and their defensive line struggled against Alabama. Due to inexperience, Air Force shows that lack of inexperience on the D-line with their triple option. But I expect Denard Robinson to have redemption in the second half. Wolverines come from behind for a victory, 34-24. Michigan wins. Vanderbilt at Northwestern. Both of these teams played a very tight game last week, both ending in different results. Vandy lost to South Carolina. Northwestern escaped a comeback from Syracuse. This is the battle of the smart schools, Harvard of the South and Harvard of the Midwest. Northwestern, Kane Coulter was the starting quarterback last week, but Simeon played well in the final drives of that game and got Northwestern the win. I think he's going to play. Kane Coulter's going to play more running back and wide receiver. They're going to find a little bit of success against Vanderbilt defense that was pretty stingy last week. But Vanderbilt, they're gonna play well offensively. Their defense is gonna do enough, and I think they're gonna escape Illinois with a victory. 23-20, Vanderbilt wins. Penn State at Virginia. After a disappointing start to the Bill O'Brien era, now they've got to go to Virginia to face the Cavaliers, who had a surprising year last year. They started off well this year, and I look to them to continue their success. They are a 10-point favorite in this one, which is a surprise. But, Penn State did not look very good against Ohio last week, and I think this is going to be a well-fought game, but the Nittany Lions offense can't do enough. 17-16, Virginia Cavaliers win. Duke at Stanford. I was not impressed by Stanford at all last week. They escaped against San Jose State. And if they played the same in this one against Duke, Duke's terrible at football, but they better watch out for an upset. I think Stanford's going to play much better in this one. They take this one 27-20, and I think they're going to get back on track. But, I thought they would be able to play a lot better this year, maybe be an 8-win team. Now it's looking more like 7 wins. And maybe even less than that. This is a battle of smart schools. I take Stanford. They're better at football, and they're smarter, 27-20. And my final one in the headlining 10 is University of Central Florida at Ohio State. Now, I think this game's going to be closer than most people anticipate. Ohio State played terrible in the first quarter against Miami, Ohio, but then outscored them 56-7 in the rest of the game. Braxton Miller looked good, and their defensive line is special. Now, Central Florida also looked good against, I believe it was an FCS school. And, I think they're going to play enough defense, Central Florida will, to keep them somewhat in this game. They're going to find a couple big plays here and there on offense. And they stay in this one, but Ohio State wins it 34-17. Braxton Miller over 100 yards passing and rushing. Continues his Heisman talk, but he does throw a pick in this one. 34-17, Ohio State over Central Florida. Now my upset of the week, Iowa at Iowa State. Last 2 times Iowa State has defeated Iowa. And I think they're going to bring home the Cy-Hawk Trophy again. They are a 4.5-point underdog against Iowa. And Iowa struggled big time against NIU. Iowa State was impressive against Tulsa. And I think Iowa State is going to take this one. It's going to be a tight game, a close one, a very good game. But Iowa State wins again, 24-23 over the Hawkeyes. Now it's time for my quick 5 picks. I've got Whiskey at Oregon State winning 34-20. They weren't impressive in their first one. They're going to play a little better in this one. They better. USC at Syracuse 56-16. This one's a gimme, and they take it easy. Utah at Utah State. I think we're going to see just how good Utah is this year. They are a sleeper. They take this one 31-21. Watch out, though. There could be an upset. Auburn at Mississippi State. This one's always a thriller. Always comes back to the last second. Auburn bounces back 31-28 over the Bulldogs. Illinois at ASU 16-14. The Illini defense plays well, and they get a bunch of sacks and get a victory. Okie State at U of A. There'll be some points on this one. Look for the yards to be around 1,000 for both teams. 56-34. Oklahoma State defeats the Wildcats. And that's it for Husker Storm blog video number 2, week 2. Check back for more weekly predictions every Tuesday. Probably around 8 o'clock at night they'll be up. Thanks for watching, and go Big Red.